And with that, we want to bring in Heidi Snow. She lost her fiance in the 1996 crash of TWA Flight 800. Heidi, boy, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. I'm wondering, as you're watching this, and you have such a personal perspective on this, people want to do something, but nobody knows what to do for these families. What can we say to them? What can be extended to them that helps in this moment of uncertainty?
One of the most important things I found, which was what led me to found the organization that I run, is I had met a woman who had lost her fiance on Pan Am Flight 103, which had crashed 8 years earlier. And being able to sit with her and talk to her and talk about him and be with somebody who's been there before was tremendously helpful, which is what led me to found Access AirCraft Casualty Emotional Support Services, because we all, with almost all of our incidents, there is a waiting time. For example, in my case, I had to wait 5 weeks before my fiance's remains were found. And during that time, I did everything I could to keep him alive, and I held on so much hope that somehow maybe he didn't board that plane, somehow maybe he got rescued. And that was so critical in my process. But it was really helpful to talk to somebody else who had been there before. Now we have...
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Now we have a...
Go ahead.
Oh, and now in our organization we have over 250 grief mentors who have all lost people in past air disasters, who are on call for these families and for other people affected by air disasters to help them through this process, because we all remember that waiting time, and it was just it's so difficult.
And I was going to say there's a vast difference between sympathy and empathy. Mm-hmm. Someone who feels sorry for you, and someone who has felt what you are feeling. Will you reach out to these people who are waiting for this news?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're here for them. And one of the things that we notice when these incidents occur is that we tend to get a lot of calls for help from people from past air disasters, because it brings us all back to day one. And everyone wants to talk about what they went through and and they all empathize and really feel a close connection to these families that are going through this process.
It sounds like what you're saying.
Really,
I'm sorry. It sounds like what you're saying is we need to let them talk. When you were in, your moments, and do you believe these people, as they're in this moment, do they have things to say? Do they want to be heard? Do they want to talk? And how do you keep them from wanting to isolate themselves?
Right. I mean, I find that most people do want to talk about their loved one and keep them alive. And in talking to people who have called us so far, they just want to talk about their loved one, and they don't speak about them being gone. They speak about who they are and that they're still alive in many ways. And that was a huge crutch for me, to be able to have that hope. And I really needed to cling on to that to get through the early weeks of this following Flight 800.
What do you think the role in the healing process, or coming to terms with it, or keeping hope, holding on to hope? What's the role of all the different theories?
I think in this case, it's a very important part of the process. I mean, one thing I do remember is when his remains were finally found, it's like I had to start all over again with a whole new grieving process and new perspective. Accepting the reality was really difficult. But during this time, I really needed the ability to vent, to talk about him, and do anything I could to keep him alive. And I just find that when we get our calls, that's what everybody is doing, and everybody is clinging on to that hope. And I think it's a really important part of the process. And later on down the road, depending on what happens, we're there for them as well when they have to revisit it from a different perspective. And that is difficult. I feel like there were two grieving processes for me. One was the waiting time and making sense of it all and holding on to hope. And then when the reality set in, I had to start all over again.
Yeah. Okay, well, Heidi.
And that is what...
I'm sorry, we just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your voice, for sharing it with them, for sharing your empathy. We know that you're making a big difference, and we appreciate you taking time to talk to us today as well. Best of luck to you, and thanks again.
Heidi, thank you.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you so much.